Now, in 3 days, the jury at the Cannes Film Festival will deliver its verdict. But for now, there are still new films being shown each day. American director David Robert Mitchell has just premiered Under the Silver Lake. I'm joined by Lisa Nesselson on the French Riviera. So, Lisa, what did you think?
Well, I enjoyed myself from start to finish. This is a sort of pop culture lover's feast. It's a neo-noir set in Los Angeles in the summer of 2011. And Andrew Garfield of Spider-Man fame plays 33-year-old Sam, who is certainly smart enough to have a job, but sort of just doesn't feel like it. So he's at risk of being evicted from his apartment in the next 5 days if he doesn't get the money to pay his back rent. He becomes friendly with a woman who lives right across the courtyard from him, and they make plans to get together the next day. But when he goes back the next day, not only is she not there, the entire apartment has been emptied out as if no one ever lived there. And so he embarks on a sort of personal detective odyssey through Los Angeles, finding strange clues and surreal interventions pretty much everywhere he pokes his nose. It has a great belief in the history of cinema, starting with the silent era, and in analog clues like the backs of cereal boxes or VHS tapes. I believe we have a clip from the film in which our guy goes to visit a man who writes a fanzine about the Silver Lake district of Los Angeles and all the misgivings he has about it. And then we have a comment from the director about how he's not going to tell you what his movie's about. Let's watch.
There's been this rash of lost and found signs for dogs, humans, musical instruments over the past 2 years. Something really big is going on. I know it.
And you think any of this could be connected to Sarah?
Of course. I mean, it could be a lot of things. Sex and drug trafficking, the cult of the whale, the dog killer, I don't know. Lately, I just assumed that the owl's kiss has something to do with everything.
The film is, in terms of, it's the genre of a noir, of a mystery. The narrative is a mystery. The main character is essentially a mystery. There is mystery built within, hidden within the fabric of the film. Again, if I say anything, to say more, I think that's probably all I can review about. Yes.
Lisa, yesterday marked the international premiere of Solo, a Star Wars story, directed by Ron Howard. Did it live up to the hype?
Well, the people who live for Star Wars installments are going to have to forgive me, but I saw it not even 24 hours ago, and I've kind of pretty much forgotten most of it, but then I've never been a fan, starting with the very first one back in 1977. This is a sort of prequel that tells us about the very young Han Solo, well before Harrison Ford stepped into his shoes, and we find out three things that even I, as a non-fan, know are important. We find out how Han got his last name. We find out how he and his sidekick Chewbacca first met up, and we find out how he became the guy behind the controls of his beloved Millennium Falcon. That said, Ron Howard, the wonderful American director, stepped in after the previous guys were fired, and I guess he did the best he could. I believe we have him commenting to France 24 on what he set out to do with this material.
Went into this and decided to treat it like it was a true story. And that the people who know the movies and really understand the galaxy, whether they're creature designers or visual effects supervisors or production designers, I use them as almost as technical advisors, like I would if it was about Formula One racing or NASA and trying to go to the moon. And it was really a fun, effective way, and it absolutely applied the same methodology. Really worked. I had a lot of fun.
I have to say I agree with you, Lisa. I don't see what all the hype is about, but there you go. Now, one of the French films competing for the Golden Palm is called At War. What kind of war are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about a war ripped from the headlines, especially here in Europe, which is people fighting to hang on to their jobs. We meet a bunch of people who work at a factory somewhere in France. They've been working very hard, and the factory is profitable. But the parent company in Germany has announced from one day to the next that they're going to close that branch and fire everyone who works there. We're talking about 1,100 people, and if you factor in their families and their dependents, that's about 4,000 people in a part of the country where there are no other jobs. So naturally, with their union rep, played by Vincent Lindon, they do everything they can. They take every form of recourse to try and just hold on to the lives they've made for themselves in this location. It's very talky, but it's also very, very convincing, and most of the faces you see there are non-professionals, and so it's easy to keep track of the characters because they're all so distinctive and so real. Here's the actor explaining what he was aiming for when he played this union rep who's fighting for the future of everyone's jobs.
These days, I can't help myself from saying, my dad once told me, or as my father used to say. But if he was here today and saw this film, and I asked him, do you think this will change anything? He'd answer, well, if it changes one person's life, if a single worker, thanks to this movie, is able to keep his job, if one single boss, thanks to this movie, can change his mind or this or that issue, then it'll have been worth it.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa, for that update from the Cannes Film Festival.